Welcome to Chasing Brighter, the podcast created as a guide to make midlife the best life.
Are you ready to embrace the next chapter of your life with confidence and excitement?
Join us each week as we bring you inspiring stories, expert interviews, and actionable tips to help you navigate the challenges and opportunities of midlife.
Are you ready to chase brighter days ahead?
Subscribe to Chasing Brighter now, and let's embark on this exciting journey together.
Remember, your best life is just a listen away. Hi, Nicole. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So I am so excited to have Nicole as a guest. Nicole was, in a lot of ways, one of my first clients when I branched out on my own. So I've been working with Nicole I've known you for over 7 years. And I really wanted to have you on our podcast because after working with you in corporate America for many years, I know that you were an amazing leader and always had an awesome team and were really great at developing people. And even I always appreciated the relationship that you and I had. And that sort of sparked you to go on your own journey. And so what I wanted to talk about today is that in September, we're really focusing on purpose. And one of the pillars of our season 3 is about personal development. And what I think what we would love is for you to share with our listeners your own journey in terms of where you ended up today, which is a leadership coach.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate it. First off, great to be here. I listen to your podcast and I love listening to it and find a lot of things that I have in common with both of you. And I love the topic. So thank you.
Thank you.
I could tell you a little bit about my journey. Still feels fresh and new in some ways, but it's been a little while now that I've been going through this. And like you mentioned, I was really lucky to have a really great career in finance. I'm a CPA by trade, so I have that technical background. And I've been working for over 20 years, but I spent almost 17 of those with the same organization, a very fast-paced, growth-oriented organization that I was really lucky to be a part of. A lot of really fun and a lot of hard work and a lot of joy. And I was really happy to be a part of that and part of the growing of the team and the leader, and not just my team, but the broader team. As Kelly mentioned, I got to be involved in a lot of different things, being in a smaller org, growing, got to really expand a lot, which was really great. And the thing that I over time recognized was that I really loved the people aspects. I found myself really drawn to the building of the team, the informal and formal coaching and mentoring, and being in community with others. I was always the one kind of planning the community events and things like that to keep everybody engaged and getting to know each other as we grew. And it was a really awesome journey. And over time, I got to the point where I started to really start to reflect a bit more. And I think even subconsciously, not always consciously, that fulfillment and happiness in my work was changing some. And I think my values started to change. My life changed. I got married, kids, kind of different responsibilities. And I was a really hard worker. I grew up in a family. My parents run their own business. So I had that heads down view of do good and do the right thing for all the people. And I think that heads down was great. And then I was looked up and I'm like, oh, do I know what I'm doing? If that's really what I want to do, is it time to reimagine what things could look like? And I was lucky enough to get introduced to a executive coach myself. And I felt really stuck. As much as it was a great role and environment and such a great experience, I felt very wrapped up in who I was as that person in the organization, my identity in the organization and the work I was doing. I couldn't untangle that from who I was. And so working with that executive coach was
Did you seek out the executive coach?
So
You were having that feeling of, I don't know if I want to be here anymore, or how'd that happen?
it was interesting. The woman, one of our leaders at the firm I was at, saw what I was struggling with and knew that I was happy and then concerned and frustrated and all over the place. And she suggested that I work with somebody, and she introduced me to somebody that she thought would be a really good fit. Because part of finding a good coach is the right person that you can feel safe with and comfortable, because being vulnerable is part of the work. of doing that really reflection.
Yeah.
And so I was lucky because she connected me to this wonderful woman that I would put in my pocket and carry on with me if I could, who I'm going to be eternally grateful for because she really helped me through the messy part of change. We dove heavily into expectations and reality, the pressures I put on myself. I'm a people pleaser. I want to do what's best for everyone. And so the idea that I would do something that put me first over other people felt so strange and emotional. And what does success mean? I had been the kind of person that I took the opportunities as they came and I just did. And that whole idea of looking up and reflecting was something I hadn't really done a lot of. And there's a lot of it's inner work and outer work that I did with her, which was a lot of reflection and I think things I was dealing with in my head that I didn't even know I was over time. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I experienced some clarity about direction and what really I wanted to do. And I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to make a bigger change. Not everybody can do
Yeah.
that. That's, I
Right.
think, challenge sometimes. Redefining what success meant to me and really leaning in to making that bigger change. I at first was like, okay, do I want to go somewhere else and do finance? Do I want to? And I had a great place I was. I could have kept going. But when it came to making a big decision like that, it felt right to make the big one. And it's funny, people ask me questions about it and I look back and I think I made the decision somewhere in my head and subconsciously before I could even verbalize it. I can see it clearer now. Hindsight's 2020.
Kelly and I
Um,
talk about that so much. I just remember after college, I just needed to get any job, right? And I think that happens so much is then you get a job and then let's say we're like you, right? We're a people pleaser. We're just trying to do the best we can at the job. And I just think it's, I don't know, then you just start this career because you were so grateful to get this job in the first
right.
place
Yeah.
that it's like we just get to be a hamster in a wheel and we're just like going and doing. And I think good or bad, our generation didn't ask any questions in our teens or 20s. And we wait till we're midlife and we're like, wait a minute, am I even happy? And it's, yeah, you can be in, you're making good money, you have a great boss, but is this even fulfilling? Is this even what my passion is? Because you got into it because you were just so happy to get a job to start with.
I think that's totally fair. I think one of the things that I've talked to different people about in this journey of mine is you talk so much about getting through college and getting a job, and you focus so much of that when you're young. And then it feels like, okay, then you're there. Okay. And then what? And it's just to your
Yeah.
point, your head's down and you keep going. And we spend, there's so much research on childhood and adolescent development. There's less on adults. And we spend so much
Yeah.
of our life, call it from early to mid 20s till career wise until 50s, 60s, even 70s. And that's a long time. And
Mhm.
It is
it's
a long time.
funny to
And
think that we wouldn't change in that
yeah,
time.
we have such long career trajectories in a lot of ways. And we had Shannon Russell, who's like second act
Second act
success,
success. Hmm.
is
Okay.
her, and she does a lot of like individual career coaching. And it's just very fascinating. Just a lot of people now are really pivoting. And it's the hard part is deciding on where to pivot, right? Because the challenge then is when you decide you want to move on to something else and you've been so dug into this one, especially for us who all have this like specialty, right? You spend all this career, you have all this experience in this one area. You could just make one phone call and get another job in that same field. And then when you're like, I think I want to like pause that door and open up something else. And it's like, where? Anywhere. Flight attendant, coffee barista, right? Like anything random, right? You could do
Yeah.
anything. And then it's like, what do you want to do? So share with us, even for you, like how did that calling, how did you listen to even what the messages were, let's say, or whatever, that was tugging at you and pulling you in this direction?
Yeah. I think what you just said is really important because I do feel like when you're in those early 20s years, it's you're still doing a lot of things that people expect you to do,
Yeah.
or you've already predetermined at some point. And it's you're taking a lot of influence from family and friends. And that makes sense at the time because you're new and you get to a point later and it's really more about looking internally and reflecting. And I think that can be scary. And it was really scary to me. I'm definitely an emotional person. I'm somebody who tends to be relatively reflective. At the same time, I I it's easier for me to reflect what I see in other people and work with other people than it is to do it for myself
Yeah.
sometimes. And that's where honestly working with somebody who asked me a lot of questions to get me to think a little bit more. I did some exercises of it's simple, right? You do a pros and cons list. I did a list that was like, what do I love? What do I like? What do I not like? When you put it on paper sometimes, and then you sit with it and you let
Mhm.
it breathe
Yeah.
in a little
Yeah.
bit. I think that's the part that's where some of the magic comes is it's change doesn't happen overnight and decisions that are big like this don't happen too. If I reflect back even a year or 2 before I even started working with the coach, I think I was already had some of that in my head. I remember at one point saying to people like, "Oh, maybe I would wanna work with people more and do talent type roles." And I'm
Mhm.
like, "I'm not a HR professional. Can I really do that? Do I have to go back to school?" With all that kind of questioning, and some people do that. Some people
Mhm.
decide they wanna go towards a career where they wanna get another craft from it. They might go back to school, get a degree or certifications or things like that, but it was really the process of spending the time and letting it almost marinate and listening to myself and allowing that to come forward in a safe space. Because I will say, and Kelly, you know me, I'm an emotional being, and it was a really
It was a lot.
emotional thing for
Yeah.
me to make that decision because I'm a people person. I'm not just a people pleaser, but I love being with people. I'm an extrovert. I'm like, I get my energy from being with people. And the idea that I would make a decision that means I wouldn't be with these people felt like, how could I do that? Why would I do that?
And just the courage it takes to not only make the decision and go for it, but also you went going into this other field, you had to go back to school,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So, did that weigh in your decision too, or the factor? Because I think that to me is something I think a lot of people in our age and in our career that are afraid to like, oh my gosh, I have to go back to school to get something else to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Share with us how you navigated that.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I was listening to one of your earlier podcasts from this season where you talked about when you get to like your 40s and you haven't been in growth mode, you haven't been in like learning mode
Yeah.
in a long time. And I did not realize how much I had been really just living in execution mode and getting things done. And I was learning along the way, but I wasn't able to really take the time to reflect and breathe and learn in the way that I think you get to when you're younger. When I was deciding to go towards coaching, I talked to a lot of different coaches. And so I talked to them about the programs, about their journeys. And so I was excited about it. I don't know if I realized what I was getting myself into. I did a 10-month coaching program and I did one of the more rigorous ones. And I'm a gut person. So for me, I felt like in the research I did, the people I talked to, the organization I went with they were very much founded on the idea of a scientist and a psychologist founded the organization. And so it's a lot about the science and the emotion and the head and the heart
Mhm.
around adult development and change. And so I'm a head and a heart and a gut person. So it just really spoke to me. So I followed my gut there. And I knew leaving my organization and wanting to try something out on my own for a while that I was going to really miss the community component of being in an organization, especially one that I'd been in so long. I had such deep, great relationships. So finding a place that felt comfortable to me, that I like believed in the mission and I like felt good about the people was important. And I heard a lot about their community, not just while you're in their program, but past that. Annual learning conferences, ways to continue to connect, the connections people have with the people that they were a part of. And so for me, that helped me feel more confident in moving towards that. Like I said a little bit ago, I did not realize how much I was craving learning more. And I think this area of learning where you're thinking about working identities, you're thinking about how you have difficult conversations, you're thinking about why things are challenging to us and this idea that I think we all think, we a lot of times think we're intellectual beings to start, but really our emotions do drive us first in a lot of ways. And so that connection between the logical side of us and the kind of feeling side of us was so interesting to me. So I really leaned into that and I found a really awesome community. There's not really sharp elbows. People are willing to share. And there's a lot of referrals if I'm not the person, because it is about finding each individual needs to find the right person for them to work
Yeah,
with. And
and
the right.
I always talk
Mhm.
like scarcity versus abundance, and it's like coming at it from an abundance perspective. Like, okay, I might not be your cup of tea. There's plenty of people out there for me. There's plenty for you. I want to go back a little bit. Okay, one of your colleagues, did you say your supervisor or
She was my chief people officer. She was
okay,
my
yeah.
chief people officer at
And
work.
she recommended this coach for you.
Yep.
Then you meet with the coach. And how long from when you meet with the coach to when you decide, okay, I'm going to pivot into this new career and leave? Like, how long was that for you?
It was a year, a little over a year. So I started working with her at the beginning of 2022. And in reflecting now, I think I made my decision, at least subconsciously, to leave in the
Mm-hmm.
fall of that
Yeah.
year. And she really supported me through the communication component of that and the emotion of telling people and sticking with the decision. And I ended up telling I was very lucky to have a really close, my CFO and I were very close. And so he was with me along the journey. So it wasn't like it was news to him. He knew I was thinking about this, but telling everyone else, for some people it was a surprise. For some people it wasn't. My team that I had brought on, that some of them I'd worked with for over 10 years. And so that was hard.
Yeah, you built your team.
Hmm.
It was
Yeah.
a huge group of people. Even from the time I knew you and first met you, even till you left, right? You had a handful and it just grew. And all those people that you had groomed and grown too, that had to have been such a challenging
Yeah.
part of this.
Yeah. So that was by far the most challenging part. I think once I figured out that this is the direction I wanted to go, I felt really good about it. I had opportunities to potentially rethink and stay and consider something different, but I I feel like I know I made the right decision, and it was something that I was able to stick to that and stay true to what I felt was the right answer for me. And that's played out really well, which I'm happy about. You never know, and
Yeah.
these things are scary, right? You're taking a chance
Yeah.
no matter what you do.
And I think, Nicole, one of the things that I'm also curious about, I love talking about this. But one of the things too is like a lot of friends, colleagues also are unhappy and afraid to say something at work. And like you talked about, there could be opportunities within their work that could
Yes.
open up for them. And so what advice do you have for them? Because I think we all innately, again, I think it's because of where we were raised. If you tell your boss you're unhappy, they're like, see you later. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. And actually not normally probably what happens, but that's a really hard thing for us to overcome. So what advice do you have for other ladies out there on that?
Yeah. I think one of the things I was reflecting on and preparing to talk to you ladies was you got to give yourself time and grace in these scenarios. I have the word grace on a post-it note
Mm.
that's like next to me because it's something that you have to continuously work on, right? It's not linear. It's not easy. But I think more times than not, and I think in this world we live in today, people want you to be happy. They want you to feel fulfilled. They want you to have opportunities to grow and evolve. And you're doing yourself a disservice by not at least having the conversation and talking about it. And I think I've had a lot of people say to me, wow, that was so brave. You took a big chance. And to me, that's what worked for me. But you also can't compare yourself to others, right?
Yeah.
I made
Yep.
a huge change. You could make a smaller change or a medium sized change, and it could take you in a really good path. Being open to that conversation, I think it goes back to being vulnerable and being able to find somebody who you feel like you can
Mm.
be vulnerable with and have that safe kind of conversation.
It
I
sounds like
think
having a coach help you, right? Versus just doing it yourself, but having someone, it sounds like
the partnership.
having someone guide you to find clarity, to then provide accountability and support was something that was really helpful in you being able to make such a big leap.
Yeah. And I've said this a lot and I continue to say it if people hear me at nauseum, but having someone to help you through this process is invaluable. I saw what my coach did for me, and I wanted to do that for other people. And that fit with who I am. It fit with my kind
Yeah.
of what I already loved. It was interesting when I told people what I was going to do. They're like, so like people saw that in me already. And I was doing it informally in a way that I didn't really totally recognize, I think. For me, it happened to fit, but I do think that you don't have to do it alone. It's not easy in this world that's fast paced. I say a lot to my clients or just we're moving at such a rapid pace. There's your email and your phone and
Yes.
the
Yeah.
doorbell's ringing and deliveries and a million things are going on. But, you know, part of the coaching, like the beauty in coaching is like taking that space that's just for you. And I think for a lot of probably people that are listening to you and are at the age that we all are, you don't do a lot for yourself. And it feels weird to put yourself for it's okay to put yourself somewhere higher on the list than you've had her. And it's never too late. I think that's one of the things that I've been
Mm.
reflecting on a
Mhm.
lot is it is a journey. It is your life's not done when you pick your career and you get your first job. Like you said, you're like so excited to get a job. And then you're like, this is what I do now, right? Forever. And so I think that there's a lot to be said for having a partner in the process and having the right partner. And that's where you were saying too about not everyone's going to be your cup of tea and not everyone's going to be the right fit for you. And so the idea that you find the right person is important.
Do you think, like we were talking, you said you were fortunate enough, so you were able to resign from your job and take some time to invest in yourself and throw yourself into a 10-month program.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you did research, trusted your gut, found this program that still offers like more long-term support. But looking back at when you were in that corporate position to now, what are some changes you're experiencing? Like, how is life for you now that you have found your purpose and you're doing something you're passionate about?
It's it's one of those things that the journey I'm hard on myself. And so it's one of those things where I'm constantly battling the parts of me that are like, you should be doing this and you got to do that. And trying to remember to take the time to reflect. And so it's interesting. I had my coach that helped me through that period of making that decision. And then through my program, part of it was also getting coaching. And so I found a different coach that was through my program who had been through it because I felt like that would be really helpful.
Mhm.
And I found another person who you interview people and you figure out who the right ones are. And she's been invaluable at helping me think through this transition and change because while now I'm a year and a few months out from leaving, I would say it's only been 4 or 5 months that I feel more stable and a bit more calm seas. I felt still pretty up and down in the early times, even though I still had that feeling, that gut feeling I did the right thing. I was nervous about money. I was grieving, grieving the
Mhm.
relationship,
Yes.
like the
The
identity of who
change.
I was,
Mhm.
right? And what it was and what I was in that time. Who am I if I'm not that person anymore? And it's a huge transition. I'm at a really wonderful place and I had moments of clarity in even in those periods where I'd be somewhere. I remember I was in they do in the organization does an annual conference and I not everybody does it, but I did it and it was virtual and we were starting off the day and it was this like they they say connection before content. So you do a connection at the beginning of days or meetings or things like that. And we were just reflecting and doing like this virtual hug exercise. We are listening to music and I was overcome with a joy at being somewhere that I really felt was where I should be. And so, like those clarity moments where you're like, oh, I'm where I'm meant to be. This is really great. Those were offset by times where I'm looking at the bank account. Even though I had the flexibility to do something big like this, I'm like, all right, I got kids, I
Yeah.
got a mortgage, and I'm also the primary earner. My husband stayed home with my kids since I have twins, 8-year-old twins. And that's been my role in our family. So that's weighed heavily on me as well. Even knowing that I knew it would take time, it's something that it's my story that I'm
Yeah.
working through.
You were talking about your job had been like your identity had been so wrapped up in your job, in producing. And I wonder how that is now. Do you feel like you've been able to untangle that? And so it's, yes, I have this new job. I have this new career I'm very passionate about, but it doesn't take up such a huge part of my identity like my previous.
But
Yeah.
was it also, like, hard? That's hard to untangle, and you're still fresh. The wounds are still fresh in
Yes.
some way, right?
Yeah. No, definitely. I think that's a really good question because I literally was talking about that last week with my coach. What success looked like and what it looks like is so different
Mm,
that it's like the things I'm doing now are not, and not that everything I did was check the box, but I feel like you get really used to the way that you operate and you're used to what you do. I was, preparing for, specific meetings I had every month and working with leadership. And I was a big part of the strategic and financial planning at my company. So that was my whole fall. I don't take vacations in the fall. And I'm like, oh, I can take a vacation in the fall. My kids are only going to want to hang around with me before they really
yeah.
become preteens and then teens. And hopefully I'm sure they still will, but it's how do I enjoy the time that I'm with them? Because I did have habits that were not good. There's such a good thing I feel like about the way I grew up watching my parents own their own business, but I have always acted like the owner, like an owner. And so it's hard for me to disassociate with that. And my role in our home is that, right? To be the earner
Yeah.
and to be the
Yeah.
worker. And that's where I don't have as much of I don't play as much of that traditional mom role. I'm lucky to have an amazing husband who manages our home and all the things, but I can actually partner with him better and more. And
Mhm.
the space I have to be present is much better. And so from a quality of life perspective, that was something I needed to change. And
Yeah.
listen, like part of that was the environment that I was in, but a lot of that was me. And so this
Yeah.
is where you can blame the organization, sure. And I'm sure some it's a dual thing, but it's also taking a look in the mirror and trying to see what are the patterns I've created.
Still untangling of these
Yeah. Yeah.
practices.
Old habits die hard.
Yes.
Mhm. Where are you going in Europe?
Oh, we're going to Croatia. I'm so
Oh,
excited.
all 4 of you?
No, just me and my husband,
Oh,
which is amazing. So we
nice.
realized we've gone on some trips like with other couples or with the kids, yeah. But it's been like 4 years since when we were just the two of us. And even then, I think it was short. And we haven't been to Europe. I don't even know how this happened. It's 8 years of children, but it's been 12 years since we went to Europe. And I was like, we gotta go. We gotta live. And we're just gonna enjoy the time and get a real break. So I'm excited. We've been
Yeah.
saved up all of our points and it feels
That sounds
weird. Should we
amazing.
really be doing this while we're
That's
in the
so
middle of this?
wonderful,
But
but I think
I,
that's what Kelly and I talk about too. I don't life is happening now. Have fun
right,
now. You know what I mean? We
right.
have today. I love that. It sounds like that shifted for you as well, right? As you were seeking your purpose and thinking about what's the point? I tell people all the time, I see so many people who own their own business. Like, what is the point of
Right.
working for yourself and having your own business if you can't do whatever the hell you want to do sometimes?
Right. No, I even recently I said something, I said it out loud. I said, I hate it when people schedule time on Friday afternoon. I was like, I don't have to take a meeting on
Mm.
Friday
Yes.
afternoon. And that there's there's something about who knows what the future brings. I might work with a firm, I might partner
Sure.
with somebody
Yeah.
else. But like for right now, being able to recreate or create what I want it to
Yeah.
be right now is really important to me. And so that flexibility to your point, what's the point if I can't make the decisions I need to make and take the kids to something if I decide I want to and not feel stressed? I have this core memory of in the middle of a stressful time a few years ago. My husband was out of town and I was rushing from work to pick up the kids and I was on a call and it was an important one and I was picking them up at the same time and they were talking and I was like yelling at them. And I remember later that night being like, oh my gosh, this is not how I want to be. And again, this is me, right? I could have said, no, I can't make it. I could have prioritized differently, but I tried to do it all. And
Yes.
then I
All the
felt
time.
guilty about yelling at my kids and they're 6. They're excited after school,
It's
right?
hard to get out of that programming. Like, I remember when I first started my practice, I always joke, but I'm like, "Oh, midnight? Oh, yes, I'm available at midnight, 11 PM. Oh, sounds great. Yes, I work Saturday, Sunday." Because I was, like, just so excited to get any clients. And then I was being like, "Oh, I I wanted to not work after school." I was taking some virtual appointments or having someone else get my kids, and I was working after school. And so then I was like, "No, I want my cutoff to be 2:30." But then I was like, "Oh, because I don't work 2:30, I can see you before work at 6 AM. I can start at 7." And then I was like,
Accidents,
"Oh,
right.
anybody, any explanation." And I have never, ever had anybody tell me, "Why? What are you doing?" When I'm like, "Oh, my next availability is," and I just say times, and they were been, "Why? What are you doing Tuesday at 4 PM?"
Oh
You
my
set
gosh.
those boundaries, but it's just that programming, I think, like you said, seeing your parents work really hard. Like, I don't think Kelly and I's parents had very good boundaries. Like, our mom worked sometimes
Yeah.
2 jobs all the time. She would be late getting us because she was late from work, and so we didn't have good examples either of somebody just saying, "No, I'm not doing it." And so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to get out of that
Well,
programming.
I
and also being a
100%.
people pleaser, right?
Yeah.
Where it's you're trying to give the person the answer they want, which is so messed up and so hard. I still can't do it even today. Actually, today I did because I did get a call. I did get a meeting request during a recording, and I was like, I can't do this with the client.
Mhm.
And so I guess there are sometimes I can't, but
I
it is
think
hard. You cannot be on a conference call while you're driving children somewhere, or it's
it doesn't
really
work.
hard.
It
No,
doesn't work.
and I still make poor decisions. I still do it.
No,
I think it's
we're
like
human.
we're all learning to navigate this whole thing and just balancing everything that we wanna do. Because even to your point, Jess, it's like living the fullest life we can, and
Yeah.
sometimes we have to do things we don't wanna do too, which gets challenging.
I have to one of my top tips is that I have my hourly calendar, and I have an erasable pen and I have a non-erasable pen. And I will line out. I used to have to put no. I would have to put no in all capitals, no, because when I would just erase it and I'd be like, "Okay, I'll add you. Oh, I'll add you in." And so it's like having to write no when I have to put that on there. So remind me,
Yeah.
like you said, that you cannot get home, make dinner, get everybody ready for practice, and have that appointment
Yeah.
there. So
No.
it's hard in the moment to say no and to think you're letting people down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say for the first year and while I was in the program, I had a lot of meetings or calls. We had weekly calls and then different sessions. And then I had intensive days where we were on all day. And then I was like, I realized I was just letting other people like block time at different times. And I hadn't really thought about how I wanted the flow to be. So I'm in the middle of thinking about the flow
Yeah.
of my week. Like, when do I want to see clients? How to what time of the day or week is better for me? Which
Mhm.
days, right? What do I want to block for more solo work and I didn't have that ability to do that before. I feel like my calendar controlled me. I all of a sudden realized like I don't want to talk to somebody at 4 o'clock on a Friday. That's not what I want to do. But it's a weird thing because you're putting yourself first again.
Yeah,
You
which can be
know,
uncomfortable.
I saw recently that I thought was really that has been really big for me is this idea of no matter what age or how much experience we have, that there's still room to grow and change. And I saw some slides of really successful women that didn't reach their kind of pinnacle until later in life. Like
Yes.
Betty White didn't become her icon status until she was 51, right? Like it's never too late, I think is something that I've been reflecting on myself and encouraging others to think about.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, we did an episode even on women who really started to thrive midlife and really
Yeah.
achieved more beyond that, because I agree.
Mhm.
I think for whatever reason, we have this expectation that you peak in your 40s and then it's all downhill
All
from
downhill.
there. And
We're
it's
just getting
so wrong.
started.
That's
Yeah.
right.
There's a lot of life to live and you want to
Yes.
enjoy it.
If we wanted to get a hold of you, I know you mentioned LinkedIn,
LinkedIn. Yeah.
but where are you in the world? How can we find you?
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We are grateful for you sharing your story, Nicole. Thank
Thank you.
you. Good Good to see you.
Yeah.
So good to
thank
see
so
you.
much.
Thanks for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe so you can hear our latest episodes as soon as they drop.
If you loved today's episode, share with a friend. Come visit us on Instagram or Facebook. Make sure to give us a follow. We have lots of giveaways. If you want to know more about Kelly and I, read our blogs, find more tips, tools, and resources, check that out at chasingbrighter.com. Thanks.